Hello and welcome, everyone. This is just another one of our Nikon AMA. So thank you very much for joining us. My name is Chris Oganek. I am our product and training manager here at Nikon Canada. So it's going to be myself, and we're also going to be bringing on a very special guest in just a few minutes. But before we bring him onto the stage, I just quickly kind of want to talk about what today's going to kind of go through. Obviously, this is an AMA. You know what that involves. You see already in the channel us asking for your questions, and that is absolutely what we want. We want to hear questions about the ZR. We want to hear questions about Taylor, about Preston. We did have already Donald, where I was going, Taves. He's already asking about, well, I guess making comments about his other cameras and his other uses with them. So he's using a Z8 for bird photography. So whether it's cinema related, whether it's Preston related, whether you're just looking for any kind of photographic discussion, that is what we are here for today. Now, the one thing I will say is that we're probably, and by probably I mean we won't, be bringing up any future products. So I do see that there is already a question about, is there going to be a professional ZR in the future? The answer to that, as always, is until it comes out, we do not know. Also, I know that there are so many passionate people who are already or who have already been reading up on the ZR. So if you do have suggestions, I guarantee that I probably have heard it already. And I do have a list that we have obviously shared to our engineers in Japan to try and make sure they know where you guys hope the camera is able to go in the future. So if you want to go and throw those in the chat, absolutely, you can feel free. But we probably won't be discussing anything in the future when it comes to firmware updates. Obviously, we have already done a firmware 1.1 with the ZR, which is absolutely crazy. It was hitting a few very I'll say meaningful things for certain users of the camera. It obviously did not involve anything massive because it was only 3 months after the camera came out. So we just have to be patient. We have to see what is coming in the future, and that's all we can really say about it today. So with that, I will go and talk to our guest, and he's been here before. We've had him at all sorts of different events for Nikon across the country. He is Preston, one of our Nikon Canada ambassadors. So Preston, thank you very, very much for joining us today. I know, obviously, I love talking to you because whenever I do, I always feel not only that I learn something, but I also feel soothed. Your demeanor, your pleasantness, just how easy and calm you are through pretty much everything. Even when we've been talking about certain events that I know aren't maybe necessarily have been in your wheelhouse, you've just been like, yeah, I got this. Don't worry about it. We'll figure a way to make it work. So it's always fantastic to have you. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me tonight. I'm hoping I can stand up to that, the expectations of that same demeanor for tonight.
No, but that's kind of one of the things that I think drew us to you when it came to being part of the ambassador program. But even before the ambassador program, you had worked on projects for us. You had done the D810, the launch for that camera, which people kind of think about DSLRs and they go, get out of here. There's no way a DSLR can go and shoot great footage. And I will say that there are more roadblocks for a cinematographer that they have to kind of get past. But once you kind of have your workflow of how you're going to kind of get your vision out, the actual end result is absolutely amazing. So I always like saying that because people are always just kind of throwing DSLRs under the bus. And my answer is, mirrorless cameras are much easier to go and shoot and get great footage. But as your D810 video showed, you can get amazing footage even with, God, at this point, it's 2026. That had to have been at least 10 years ago, the D810.
I think was it 2013, I think?
Yeah.
Crazy.
long time ago. So that I kind of want to talk about you just quickly while we're kind of going through and waiting for a few more questions, but we already do have a bunch popping in here. Going from where we were with you in 2013 to kind of where you are now, in terms of projects, in terms of kind of what gets you, like what drives you, what makes you want to go and shoot something now, and it kind of has your philosophy changed for what you look for in terms of clients, in terms of what you look for to have your own kind of passion project, to kind of do things for yourself? Is there any way you've kind of changed over the years?
It's been an interesting journey. I started out back in 2010. I had shot a film a day for a year, and the intent of that project was just to learn more about the craft, about kind of what I liked doing, what I didn't like doing. And since then had kind of went through the whole journey of really low end commercial and corporate work, got into the narrative world, worked on bigger TV sets as kind of lower positions to see kind of what that world was like. And then kind of as I went through my career and budgets got bigger, cameras got bigger, and through that process, there was something that, I don't know, I kind of lost that spark as why I kind of started making films in the first place. It turned more into gear management than it did actually creating things. So it really made me think as to the tools themselves and why I chose specific tools to use, and realize that I prefer smaller kits that I can have with me at all times. The way, or the I guess the direction technologies came up until today is you can capture such stunning images in such a tiny little camera, which just blows my mind. And for me has been that shift back to that small format, because the other thing that I had realized through the process is that instead of it being about the gear, I wanted it to be about the experience and the people in that experience. And by going back to these smaller formats, it brought me way back into that being in the moment with the crew and with the people we were working with. And just it brought the passion for filmmaking back to me by being able to use smaller pieces of equipment, which has been nice.
Yeah, it's always, for me, it's a nice thing to kind of hear, because you talk to people, and I obviously talk to a lot of kind of tech heads, gear heads, and it's always like, give me the best, give me the best, give me the best. And don't get me wrong, like that is a big part. I am a huge nerd, and I love going in and getting into the real minutia of specific lenses and bodies, and really kind of figuring out what is best. But at the same time, when it comes from such a creative point of view, when you kind of start your journey wanting to be so creative, and then I find a lot of people kind of lose that along the way, myself included. I'll go through periods where it just kind of drops off, and really being able to kind of go and find that creativity and find that passion, it sometimes means kind of removing some of that gear from the situation and just kind of looking at what it is you're really looking at achieving, and trying to kind of block out some of the stuff that's kind of filtering through.
Yeah, specifically with the ZR2, it was a weird placement, because before that I'd been using the Z8 and still use that camera for a lot of the different productions that I do. But this one just hit such a sweet spot of, I call it my everyday carry, where it's just the camera that I just have with me at all times, because it is so small and you're able to get so much with it. It's I don't know, it's instead of it creative projects always having to be fully flushed out and planned, I can have this camera with me and then be inspired to go like shoot something on whenever I'm traveling. I just go out and just do the thing, which has been amazing. With the bigger cameras, I would never have them with me, and I would just end up using my phone. Like, so much nicer to be able to have something a little bit more substantial to, I don't know.
I totally agree. And I think what I think threw a lot of people with the launch of the ZR was, you saw in the intro video, we had a little segment where the camera was fully rigged out, like looking like a true, like, take this onto a Marvel movie, massive rig that we had it up on. And it's amazing that you can go and do that. There's a bunch of third-party companies now that are fully enabling you to rig it out any which way you want. Obviously, if you want to have a larger monitor, if you want to go and have your mics, whatever it is, V-mount batteries, you can do it. But I think the amazing thing is that it is
Yeah.
just at the heart of it, so unbelievably small. And people want, or certain people have asked for, give me a bigger grip, give me a this, give me a that. And I fully agree with them. For certain uses, it isn't going to be what out of the box you would necessarily imagine. But the amazing thing is, this is it at its starting point, right? Like, this is it at its key tiniest capability, and you can go do so much just with it as this size. And then if you want to go and get it larger, I've got the small rig cage around here somewhere. You go throw one of the little small rig or any of the other rigs on it, and you now have a little bit larger of a grip. You now have, so there's ways to make it do whatever you want, but having such a kind of, like you said, everyday carry in a tiny, tiny form factor is really, really cool.
Yeah, and like you said, rigging it up too is nice. Like when I do solo doc projects, it'll be my go-to camera, where if I don't want to have a sound recorder on set or anything like that, I can use the Teradek sync now to get timecode. And then with the 32-bit float, I don't have to worry about audio, which with the Z8, because it didn't have the 32-bit float, you'd have to kind of ride the levels. But with this, it's just like set it, forget it, and just go and shoot, which has been nice.
Yeah, it does check a lot of boxes for a lot of people. Yeah. So let's now jump into a couple of the questions that we have going here. So I'm going to start with this here. So a lot of my answers, and Nathan's kind of running this in the back of the in the background here. He's going to laugh when I say this, but how good is NRAW compared with the R3D&E? And my answer for a lot of this is going to be, it depends. And that's, I'm pretty sure it infuriates him at the office when I say that, because it's true, but he usually wants some definitive answer. So with how good is NRAW versus R3D&E, I would say for me, and Preston, I'll kind of ask your take on it in a second. I don't necessarily think there's a right or a wrong. Whether you choose NRAW versus R3D&E versus whether you want ProRes RAW, if you want raw video, there's different flavors of it depending on what your needs are. If you're shooting with a whole host of other Nikon cameras, let's say a Z6 III, a Z8, a Z9, and you want to match the footage perfectly without having to do much extra work to it, then I would go and say shoot NRAW. If you want to go and shoot ProRes RAW, whether it's because it's the editor you're used to deals with it a little bit easier, or you just are used to it for whatever reason and you want to continue with it, go and shoot ProRes RAW. Or do you want R3D&E? Are you either matching it to other RED cameras? Are you really trying to see what kind of the camera's capable of? I would say there's never really a wrong answer. You will get a few extra little things with the R3D&E. You'll get the kind of true dual base ISO control in the camera with R3D&E versus NRAW or ProRes RAW. So there are a few minor things that you will get with that versus the others. But for me, it's not necessarily a better or worse. It kind of what fits with you. I know a lot of people, if the ZR is the only camera that they have, a lot of them are getting into R3D&E, which, to be honest, is kind of the draw of the camera. You're getting the red color science without having to jump into a full Komodo X or Raptor X, anything along those lines. So it's really tempting to go and just jump right in, but there's no downside to using NRAW, especially if you are trying to match with other Nikon cameras. So Preston, do you have a kind of take on that?
Yeah, I'm probably the weirdo in the room here. I've shot with all the different formats. I typically, though, I'm shooting almost all my stuff H2, 6.5, SDR, flat profile, because I don't know if it's
a collective gasp. A collective gasp just went up through all the people.
Seriously, I know it's. I find I'm able to match that with almost any other camera that I'm shooting with, and maybe because I've been using that for years in the other cameras, I'm just used to knowing how to push the image. It just, I don't know. It's been my go-to when it comes to the raw formats. Typically what I'll do is if there's like a high contrast scene where I'm shooting into the sun or something, that's when I'll rely on the raw formats to get that little bit more versatility in it. But I would say 90% of the stuff I shoot is is the H.265 flat profile.
Which is crazy, because I think a lot of people see your level of work and they just expect, oh, you're achieving this as an end result, you've got to be shooting at least N-Log, if not RAW. So I think it throws a lot of people when they kind of see, hey, wait a second, like, if Preston's doing it, there's not always a single route. Whether it's like the question, do you need to go and shoot R3D&E? Do you need to shoot NRAW? Or do you even need to shoot N-Log? If it works for what you're used to and how your brain is kind of seeing the image versus what you know you'll get, if you have that experience, you can get away with a lot less.
And I think a lot of it too is in as I always say, work with the light. So thinking about how you're composing your shot too plays into that. So if it's shooting a scene out a window, knowing that you shoot out the window, it's darker inside, you either will expose for outside or inside, or you'll have to light the inside a lot. So it's having to know, maybe you don't shoot out the window, maybe you turn the camera a different direction, and then it's at that point it's a nicer light anyways. So it's kind of from that perspective is probably why maybe I'm getting away with it more. I don't know, but it's a little bit of working with the scenario you're in, and yeah, I don't know.
No, but it does go a lot to the kind of the philosophy behind shooting. And one of the things that whenever I hear you talk about a scene or about setting something up, or about, we were in for the ZR launch, you were out in Calgary with us when we did the launch with one of our dealers there, TCS, and hearing you talk about kind of your approach to a scene, it always makes me just want to stop whatever I'm doing, sit down and just listen, because hearing you talk about lighting, I feel like when I'm around cinematographers, I feel like there's there's obviously different levels, right? There's different levels of photographers, of everybody, but seeing different people's approach to dealing with light, whether it's flagging it, whatever their process is, watching that in real time is always so amazing to me. And I always feel like when I hear you talk about working with light, I just want to go, okay, just talk about that. Just enlighten us, please. Just keep going. So it's definitely part of it, but it's also part of this like overarching kind of philosophy to just shooting, which is get the most out of your scenario. And at the same time, if you can make it be more creative and kind of grab your viewer more, it's never a bad thing.
Yeah, and I think that the true part of that is it doesn't matter what camera you're shooting, doesn't matter what codec you're shooting. It's looking at the environment you're in, analyzing it, and then shooting what looks nice. You know, that's I think more of for me what it is yeah, I don't know, just working with what you have and not overthinking it a little bit too.
Which is tough to do, definitely tough to do. So Alex has a question, and this is a little bit more techie. So with our R3D&E, we have a dual base ISO, which means we have basically a low ISO and then a high ISO. And the idea is theoretically to never really shoot with the in-betweens. So you're either going to shoot with them when it's good light at ISO 800, and then if you're going to be shooting in lower light situations, jump right up to 6400. And you can go and do the test yourself. There's a bunch of people who've done it online. But if you were to go and shoot at 5000 ISO, and then you were to compare that to 6400, because that's where the next kind of gain kicks in, your 6400 shot will actually be cleaner than your 5000. So do you always have to stick to 8 or 16? And the answer is no. We've actually, and I won't get into it here, I don't have the graphic to show, but it is on the ZR page, is we actually have the dynamic range of the ZR actually changes depending on the ISO that you select. So if you're choosing your low ISO as 800, okay, so you're going to have, let's say, a little bit more captured of the highlights versus the shadows. And then if you shift it down, so you can still select what your base is. If you select it down to, let's say, 400 ISO, it now shifts. So you're now going to capture more of the shadow detail than the highlight detail. But if you go the opposite way, if you go up to 1600, you're now going to capture more of the highlight detail versus the shadow. So you're able to, depending on your scene, go and influence how much of the dynamic range is highlight versus shadow based on the ISO you actually pick. Now, this is really getting into the weeds. For most people, I would say yes, stick with 800, stick with 6400. But if you want to go and really learn the camera and really figure out the best situations, go and shoot. Get a scene where you have a lot of highlight, you have a lot of shadow. In my mind, I'm kind of thinking like an open window with some sunlight streaming in that's going to be kind of overblown. And then you have kind of not much light on the inside, giving you kind of that really big range. And go and shoot different scenes. Shoot that, go play with it afterwards, whether you shoot, whether you edit in Resolve, whatever it might be, but go and play. See what works best. And then kind of like Preston was saying, when you are in those scenes, shoot what looks good. And if you know the settings that go with that, it makes it even better. So Alex, I'll say ideally, yes, for an initial easy answer, yes, stick with 864. But if you do want to play, and if you do really want to kind of get into the weeds of it a little bit more, you can go and figure out when those other ISOs could be better for you. But generally, it's going to be 8 and 64 is where people are going to live.
I found too with shooting, with shooting with that too is almost no matter what format in the results for myself. I find going to the lower end of exposure I get better results versus the high end. So underexposing a little bit with it. If you shoot at the 800 or 6400, you'll likely need to ND your camera to get the proper exposure. But I definitely would recommend sticking with the ones that are there just for the dynamic range, but obviously test for yourself.
Yep. And Preston, I'll leave this one to you. So they're asking, what's the best setup for timecode on the ZR? Can I hook up an external like his TC1? So I know you use mostly Tentacle, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
What are you finding for your setup?
Yeah. So before the sync came out, Tentacle had a Y splitter. So I would do one channel would be the Tentacle sync, and then into the audio port, and then the other I would put my mic going into the second side of the Y. So then the right channel would be the audio track, and then the other would be the mic. I've found with the timecode, the way it's built in here, it's best to leave the Tentacle sync connected. You can jam sync it and take it out. It'll keep the sync, but if you change any modes in the camera, you'll have to likely sync it again. So if you just leave it connected, it'll keep picking it up. So that's how I set it up for operation, is just having it connected.
Cool. So I'm going to go back to Alex, and Alex is just as a follow-up. He's saying, is that the case in terms of the dual base ISO that we were just talking about? Is that the case for ProRes or only for Enron R3D&E? So I'll actually say it's not. Okay, I'll say it this way: it's only for R3D&E. So if you're in NRAW, if you're ProRes RAW, if you're H.265, none of those get the true dedicated low and high ISO base. You still will get similar characteristics to it, in that if you shoot 6400 versus 5000, your 6400 will still be cleaner, but you don't have the ability to shift that dynamic range the way I was talking about. So I'll say that when I was talking about getting into the weeds, that is only for R3D&E. Everything else, you have the characteristics of a dual base ISO sensor, but it isn't going to behave exactly the same in terms of when you do change those minor things with the ISO. Wayne is asking, and I don't know that I have the answer to this. I'll be very honest with him. I can look into this and see if I can get one afterwards and maybe put it in the contents in the comments of the video if I can find it. But they're asking, does the Tascam receive audio and timecode at the same time? If not, what is the solution? So my guess would be no, because you would, depending on which Tascam you're talking about, but if you're talking about the new Tascam that has a digital hot shoe, you would pop that into the hot shoe of the ZR, feed the audio that way, and then theoretically you'd be able to go and time code it through the 3.5 mil jack. That would be my guess. Without actually testing it and having it in front of me, I don't know. Would that be what you're thinking too, Preston?
Yeah, I mean, it's the new Tascam that goes on the top of the hot shoe. Is that the one?
I think so. Yeah, I think that's probably what they're referring to. I don't know for sure.
Yeah, I would still put that into the 3.5 for sync. Yeah. There's also Mutiny has a time code device too, where you can, if you wanted to have, you go technical sync into the Mutiny device, and then you can also put an audio channel into that, and then one cable out into the camera as well.
Oh, that's nice.
Just another, pretty affordable piece too. But
nice. So yeah, they're saying similar question regarding the Holland M2s for time code 3.5 mil. Yeah, I believe that would. Again, I'd have to go through. I have a lot of third-party stuff in my brains, but we're getting into the weeds now, and I don't have every answer. As much as I would love to, I don't have the answer for everything. But
maybe the one way to answer this one is, a lot of audio recorders, you're able to jam sync, and what that means is you use a device that has time code, that you can connect it to a device that will set the clock on whatever device it is. And then if all the devices are synced, whether your sound recorder and your cameras, in post-production, you can pretty much hit a button and it'll sync all those cameras and audio for you. So instead of having to manually sync all the audio, especially for larger productions, it's critical to have that, time code to be able to sync to.
All right, so I'm going to show this one. So this isn't necessarily well, I guess it is a question, but it's not going to be a solution that the person is going to be happy with. So they're asking that they want a way to pair their Z8 to the RS5 through Bluetooth. And unfortunately, there's no way to do it natively through the camera. I know with certain other Nikons, you are able to kind of find a little bit of a hack to make it work, but the Z8, it doesn't have some of the same menu options that certain other cameras do. So because of that, as of right now, we aren't able to do that. Is that going to change in the future? I don't know. I'm really not sure, because there's sometimes it's just firmware, but other times there are actual hardware limitations based on what the camera is capable of. So I cannot say for sure. Sorry about that. And then this one, I'm going to ask a little bit more details. So I'm going to ask details and then we can jump to other questions. They're asking, what is your opinion about the ZFC in film mode if you compare it with the ZR? Now, the ZFC is actually a crop sensor camera. So it's one of our DX cameras. So my question to you is, are you asking about the ZF? Because the ZF is our full frame version of the ZFC. So if you are asking about that, then throw that in the comments, and I'll come back to it afterwards once you kind of work about that, answer more about that. Okay, we're getting away from cinema for a second. So with that last ZFC question and this one, they're asking, would a Nikon SB flash work with the Z7 II remotely? And the answer is, depends on the flash and depends on what type of remote you want to do with it. But theoretically, yes. If you are dealing with, let's say, an older SB flash, and maybe if you want to throw it out there specifically which one you're using, so I can give you a more dedicated answer, but the answer should be yes. If you want to go in SB900, the answer is absolutely. So to trigger an SB900, what you would need, though, is an additional unit on the Z7 II that would optically trigger the SB900. So whether that means another flash that can work in commander mode. So we're talking about basically anything going back to SB 600, 700, 800, 900, 910, even the new SB 5000. You put that on there and it will go and trigger, not only adding light into the actual scene, but it will also trigger remotely your SB 900 as a remote. That works no problem. Or we also have the SU 800. The SU 800 is just a trigger. It's just used for optically triggering other flashes, and you can go and utilize that as well. And yes, you would definitely only be able to get optical triggering out of the SB 900 because it doesn't have radio capability. You would need the SB 5000 and then one of our WR units, the WR 11B, I think it might be. Alrighty. Okay, so I'll throw this one to you, Preston. Dowdy, if it's the Dowdy I know. Hello, Dowdy. I haven't seen you in a long time. Do I really need the mini SD card for the ZR? What are your thoughts on that?
I haven't used it once. So,
and again, it depends totally on your usage. Is kind of the thing where if you want to go and shoot, let's say you want to go and shoot your R3D&E footage, and you want to go and obviously use a faster card for that, or you need to use a faster card for that. So you'll have a CF Express Type B card. And then if you are going to be shooting H.265 and you want to throw that to your micro SD card, then you can go and have basically a separate workflow for your RAW and your H.265s. If you want to have your shoot some stills and you want to go and have the still images be thrown to the micro SD card, you can go and do that as well. Or you can never put a card in there and or an actual card in the slot, and you can just use the Type B cards. So there's no real right or wrong. I think that's similar to somebody saying, even with a Z8, do I have to use the SD card slot, or can I just use my CF Express slot? And the answer is whatever works for you based on what you feel. Ooh, and actually, as I'm saying that, Donnie actually had a good recommendation, is you can go and load all of your LUTs onto your micro SD card. That's a really good idea. And basically always have them there. So if you are constantly swapping back and forth between different looks, then that's a great way to go and do it. And I will say, is Delkin Black, the CF Express cards, compatible with Z7? I will give this as a blanket answer, where some people get confused. Well, maybe not confused is the right word, but they will look at the list that Nikon puts out that gives a compatibility for our cameras, and it has usually a very small amount. It'll have 1 or 2 Sony cards, 1 or 2 Lexar cards, 1 SanDisk card, and then there's a million of other cards out there that aren't on it, saying, "Oh, wait a second, can I not use Delkin? Can I not use Angelbird?" Whatever it might be. The answer is no. You can absolutely use them. Those are the cards that we test, that we fully 100% guarantee that they will work with no issues. Personally, I've been using Delkin Black for years now. Basically since the Black Series came out, that's been my kind of card of choice, even though it isn't technically on our list of qualified cards. Doesn't mean it will not work, and that is one of my favorites. So I would definitely say definitely go for it, specifically with that card. Okay, now there's a question here from Living Journey. I'm making sure. Yeah, okay. So this is a two-parter. So are you using the ZR for your docks? And if so, how do you rig it, given its smaller footprint, to kind of make it fit depending on what it is? And then they do also have a part 2, which is, better yet, how does the ZR fit into your workflow with the Z8? Is it a B cam? Is it an A cam? So I know you have a very specific way that you can shoot with these, and you kind of mix and match. So Preston, I'll give it on over to you.
Yeah, it totally depends on the shoot, how many people I have with me, and kind of what the intent is, honestly. There's been situations where the ZR has been an A cam, where I have a shotgun mic, the Sennheiser, don't know the number, but it's a AA battery, phantom powered, so you can still use it 3.5 in, and you don't have to have, since the ZR can't power the shotgun, I'll use that. And then this isn't fully rigged out, but side handle on it, mic would go here, and then that would be one potential configuration. And then I do matte box just for filtration as well. That I've used lots this last year for kind of solo operation projects. But I also, if I want to have a situation where I'm doing any gimbal work, then I would leave one camera rigged on the gimbal. Usually it's been the ZR on there just because of the footprint and it being lighter and smaller. Yeah, a mash of things, honestly. The audio one, though, is I tend to be over the last little while, I've been leaning on the ZR just because it's when I use the Z8, I've got the Tascam FR AV2. Just because it's got the 32-bit float audio in that. And then I would run my shotgun into that and then do a line from that recorder into my camera. But then it gets heavier because I got this big device on it. So yeah, this has kind of been the go-to right now, has been the ZR for the dock work with. Even the footprint of it rigged up is still way smaller than what I'm used to. And then also the other part too is the advantage, and I don't want to keep selling people on smaller cameras, but advantage of the smaller, this specific footprint, when I operated with my bigger cameras, I'd have an easy rig with a big thing above me to take the weight off, because if you're operating for a long day, it gets so heavy. Whereas with this setup, even with the Z8, with the intermittent stabilization and the autofocus, is just like my shooting ratio has gone up dramatically because of that. I can hold the camera like this and be walking and be as stable, if not better, than operating when I had the easy rig on with the bigger rig, which usually I wouldn't want to do, because with smaller rigs, the idea was always you get the jitters, but I don't find I get that with this at all. So it's kind of solved that problem, which is nice.
And talking about autofocus, I know that when we first had you do shoot for us with the Z8, and I knew how connected you were with manual focus, and I didn't want to push it on you too much, but I kind of threw it out there where, you know what, Preston, just do a couple scenes for me where it's pure autofocus, where there's a little bit of movement in the scene, kind of you're able to jump back from one to the other, and just let me know how it works. Just that. And I remember you coming back and just being like, Chris, this is ridiculous. It's now, and there were certain scenes that you were like, I would have had to redo that 5-6 times to be able to nail it manually. And now you're able to, with just a push of the, whether it's letting the camera do its thing or changing the subject just on the back of the screen. I think the way you kind of said it was, it opened up the way you shot.
Yeah. Shooting ratios went way up. Like the amount of content I was able to get in a shorter period of time was crazy. And when autofocus started to come out on cameras, it was just, I couldn't think in my head how I would ever be able to use it, because I always, you have to be in control of what's in focus. I didn't think you'd be able to technologically figure out it, but the mode I use is the one where you can pick the point of focus, and with the side handle, you can just move the joystick to wherever you want the thing to be focused on, and you can set the focus pull speed of whatever you want. So you can basically operate like you would as if you were manually pulling focus or had a focus puller, which, yeah, it's completely changed how I shoot, which is amazing.
So we have another question here. Specifically, I'll throw this one to you, and it's about the ZR and the LCD screen. So that's obviously one of the biggest things that people go, oh my God, I couldn't believe how large it was, how bright it was, how amazing it was, how much bigger it seemed than any other camera that they'd really shot with. But in the real world, with that back LCD, how do you find it to be when you're outside in really bright sunlight? And somebody else, and I will pull this up afterwards, somebody else had a question about, is there a way to basically put a mini monitor on there, or a small little kind of mini EVF, just a way to kind of block out some of the extraneous bright? But how do you find it in bright conditions?
When I first got this camera, when it was first coming out for the launch video, I rigged it up like I rig up my Z8 and had everything on it, monitors and everything. I'm like, this is the way to use this camera. And then as I got using it and saw that the quality of that monitor, how bright it was, I ended up stripping everything down and just operating without a monitor, because it was bright enough for like bright sunlight scenarios and big enough to be able to see everything I need to see. So most of the times when I'm operating with this, I don't use. That being said, if there is a situation where I'm wanting to rig it up for, I don't know, needing to send a signal out to Video Village or something, and I need to rig it up, I will put a monitor on, because with the cables on the side, sometimes they'll get in the way of the monitor being flipped out. In certain, however you're holding the camera, you can't flip the screen to see it exactly how you need it in some scenarios. But most of the time I just go without.
Do you ever, or have you ever, because I know some people will only ever want something kind of far away, whether it's a large LCD screen or like an external, or whether it's on the back of the camera. Have you ever gone with, like, I'm trying to think of I think back in the day, like Hoodman had a bunch where it was a cover that went over the LCD that you could actually get your eye up to it. Have you ever tried anything like that? Because that's kind of what they're asking here. Is there anything you suggest to use almost as like a mini EVF for when you want to go and kind of maybe capture photos, and you kind of, or you just want to block out more of the light?
I, for whatever reason, just never, I've always been a back of the screen person, monitor person. I don't know why. I've tried. I had back in the day the HVX 200, and it had both the diopter to look through and the screen. It was always just the screen. So there's lots of options that I think would work. I think like Zacuto's got some stuff that are there's a video feed out to them. I don't think they have any loops that would fit these screens. Maybe they do. I haven't been following that too much.
Yeah, so there are options. Go take a look. I do find that most people I've talked to they were maybe worried about the lack of an EVF, and kind of Preston, kind of your mind where you're like, this is how I used to do it, and it just, in the real world, no issue.
Even for photos, that was the other thing, is thinking of like with this camera, and not having it, I thought would be a burden, or I just wouldn't turn to it for photos. But I still find myself, I don't mind tapping the back of the screen, because I know when the photo is taken that it's in focus. And I don't know, I've gotten used to that style as well. I still will on the Z8 for photos use the EVF or whatever on it, but for the most part, it hasn't caused me to not want to pick up this camera, not having that for photos.
Fair enough. Okay. So here's a question specifically for you, and they're asking, what is one of your favorite ZR features?
Good question. So obviously, I mean, I've said a lot of them. Footprint, I like the size, being able to have it with me. The 32-bit float's a big one. What else? Just trying to think in comparison to the Z8, the differences of. I mean, those are really, I would say, is the big ones would be the audio aspect of things. That's where it kind of changes my decision making between this and this.
I was going to say that's obviously, like, having a bigger screen is nice.
Yeah,
but something that actually can make a big difference to you in the end. Yeah,
screen. Obviously, the screen. That's a big one. Yeah, the fact that I don't have to have a monitor always, that's nice. Yeah, I would say those are the main ones.
Nice. Specifically, maybe talking about how you rig the camera out, are there any specific cages that you'd recommend?
Small rigs kind of been my go-to for all my DSLRs. They do a good job with the mounting points on them. So that's been
I was hoping you were going to say something different, because I was going to say
yeah.
smaller.
Yeah.
I know that there are some new ones coming out. Was it Condor Blue? I think they are going to have, either it's out now or they were kind of doing some pre-orders for it. I have looked into 2 or 3 others. They look very similar for the most part to small rig, and I've had great results with the small rig one. Whether it's the feel, the texture, like you said, the mounting points. I love the fact that you have the bottom that goes into the tripod mount, but you also have the 2 securing mounting points to the top, like into the actual eyelets of where the strap would go. So it really holds it super secure at 3 points. Because with most other cages, it's basically just the bottom point, and it can kind of wiggle around and move sometimes. So just as from a security point of view, I really, really do love the small rig. I'm seeing a Jenny. Hello, fellow Nikon Canada ambassador. Thanks for joining in. I kind of wanted to ask a little bit about your philosophy, because kind of we talked before about kind of where you started, where you kind of got into. How did you make the difficult decision? Because I don't want to say saying no to commercial gigs is what you did, but being able to kind of slow yourself down and not either burn yourself out or just find that you're making time for yourself. How did you make that difficult decision? Because if the choice is give me a gig that I'm going to make money at, or say no to something, or maybe push it down the line a little and have them say no, how do you find that line in the sand? Because for your own sanity, you kind of need it, but it's difficult to say no to just the monetary aspect of it.
Frankly, I know you mentioned burnout without making the decision without burning out, but burnout was part of it, of going down this rabbit hole of saying yes to everything, realizing that that's not sustainable. And also knowing when I picked up a camera, that passion that I would always have, that not being there, that was a problem. And I knew I needed to figure out what was causing it, and then how to obviously fix that relationship with creating. And a lot of it was stepping away for a minute, trying other things. And in that stepping away period, realized, oh shit, I do love this. And probably the healing from being burnt out is where I was able to realize taking the path less traveled and maybe saying no is the healthiest thing to do, that actually unlocks opportunities that you otherwise would not have had. If you're always kind of in the weeds of doing things that don't always light you up, you're not putting your full efforts and intention into it. So the final product isn't as good as it could be. And I always believe your last project is kind of the reflection of what your future projects will be. And when you get to a spot where you're creating work that you're really proud of, it's like I don't know, everything becomes easier. People see it. People see you're passionate about it. People can feel that energy. And I don't know, it's I think it's a spot where creativity needs to sit and live.
I totally agree. I totally agree. It's one of those things, and Veronique, another Nikon Canada ambassador, kind of said the same thing, falling in love, and maybe not even just for the first time, but falling in love again with what you do can be priceless. And being able to find that passion again, I think, is something that, whether you're a cinematographer, whether you're a photographer, whether you do school portraits for your living, whether you shoot weddings, whether you're out shooting birds, like whatever it is, finding the passion and holding on to it is so difficult. And being able to tell the story of kind of going through that path of maybe losing it a little bit, coming back to it, making hard decisions, but ultimately being able to say, hey, this is something that I do truly love. It's really, really powerful. And I do think a lot of people don't realize how much they may have lost what they started with. And it's really good to kind of try and go back and reconnect.
And the other part of that too is I have a saying that whatever your belief system is, if you have one go at this thing, why not do the stupid thing? And the stupid thing meaning, like, by society standard, take the risk, do the thing. It's like, what's the worst that's going to happen? I don't know. I don't want to sit with regret though of not doing the thing.
I like that. I really like that. Okay, so everybody, we're getting close to the 1 hour mark. We usually kind of start end a little bit before that or right around it. So what I will say is, if you do have any other questions for Preston, get them out now, because probably we'll slowly start winding down here, just to make sure we don't keep everybody for too long on this beautifully cold, at least out in here in Toronto, beautifully cold Thursday night. The photography hobbyist is asking, where's all the Nikon gear to purchase? So I do think in Nikon Canada, I thought we might have had a few things available. I will tell you, from a brand point of view, it's actually very difficult to get this. Even though we are Nikon, we can't sell certain things if it's branded a certain way. I know that sounds silly. How can the brand itself not do it? But it's because we're Nikon Canada and they're Nikon USA, and then Nikon Japan is the one that kind of has to go through everything. So it's actually logistically getting branded things to sell is actually very difficult. That's why we will sometimes, when we have launch events, when we hold different events, we will give away certain items. That's actually much easier to do. So the easiest way to get some merch is to come on out to a Nikon event when we do have it. Usually we do obviously have them for launch events, so when we have new cameras, but we also do sometimes have them when we go to specific dealers as well. So I'll say that's the easiest way to get some merch is to go to a Nikon launch event. That's going to be the best way to go and do it. So I have one last question for you, and I'm going to kind of ask it slowly so that the people can go out and so if I see Jeff asking, free hats. If you come to our events, we usually do have that. The hat you're wearing right now, that was an ambassador hat, correct?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was the ambassador one. But yes, I'm sitting here and I can't quite reach it, but on top of one of my Mando helmets over there's a Z Cinema hat. So we actually gave that out at the ZR launch. So yes, we sometimes do have free hats. We sometimes have also had free t-shirts. We usually have some sort of swag that we give out at least Nikon Canada events. Okay, so one question I had for you is, when it comes to the ZR, I'll frame it as a ZR, but if you have different answers for your Z8s, and maybe you can give that. When it comes to stabilizing, when it comes to kind of using it in some sort of rig, how do you choose whether you're going to stabilize it with a tripod, with a gimbal, with a slider now, or handheld? Now, obviously, that sounds like a silly question on the face of it, because if you want a sliding shot, you're going to usually use a slider. If you want a locked off shot for extended periods, you're going to use a tripod. But I think with the ZR, its size and weight has kind of changed that at least a little bit for you. Can you kind of talk about how you kind of go through that thought process?
Yeah, it's going to be different for everybody, obviously, but for me, it depends on the kind of project it is. If it's a commercial project, every project, there's storyboards and shot lists, so that's all determined ahead of time, and it's all really of what I think would look the nicest in the type of movement based on the type of project being done. If it's a brand that is more intense, or it is something that would cater to more movement or faster cuts or whatever, like that type of thing, that would dictate how I would operate. For a lot of my doc work is mostly all handheld, And then I'll kind of break the day up a little bit where there'll be general coverage is handheld. And then I'll have like a time for the cinematic shot. So it's more of like knowing the scene coverage that I have. And then I would go in and do filler shots to kind of fill in the story, whether it's on a gimbal or slider. It's really is whatever I'm kind of feeling in the moment a little bit. The thing that's nice with this is what I would have normally wanted to have either on a slider or a gimbal, I can now kind of get away with more by just the way in which I hold the camera, arms against my side. I can kind of like simulate slider shots a little bit, and whether it's up and down shots, like there's different tricks because of the stabilization that I would have not been able to do before. But I don't know if
now, when you do say stabilization, are you talking about the electronic stabilization? Are you talking, because we have a few different types. We have the EVR, which is the electronic vibration reduction, and then we also have the optical, which is obviously the sensor moving around. And within optical, we have normal and sport. So which of those is kind of your go-to?
I've said it once when I got the camera on sport mode, and I haven't turned it off. There's some situations I've found when there's been times I've deactivated it, but I'd say like 90% of the time it's been on.
Yeah, I think for most people, that's what I usually recommend is sport mode, especially if you are hand holding in any way. If there's any little bit of movement that you are going to intentionally put into the shot, you want sport. Normal will fight you a little bit, and it's not doing anything wrong, but it's doing what it's made to do. It's made to stabilize the shot to the best of its ability to not show any movement. So if you're holding it straight and you're doing a long exposure of a still photo, you want normal to be able to give you the maximum capability of stabilization. Well, in cinema, you generally want some sort of intentional movement, whether it's the small little ones, whether it's on a gimbal, whatever it might be. And any intentional movements, you're going to want that little bit of extra help. And when you do want that little bit of extra help, you're going to want sport VR. So that's usually what I'd recommend. And then I think this might be one of the last questions. Jeff's asking, what handle is that on your camera?
It's the most important thing to have with the setup. I use it for everything, and the Z8 too, the MCN10. And it's just for operation. Changing controls of the camera as you're operating is so much easier, I find, with using that side handle. And I also find for stabilization, it's nice to have a little bit bigger footprint on the horizontal axis with it. Highly recommend that with this configuration.
Yeah, powered by, I think it's 4 AA's and a USB-C cable. Two AA's plugged in through a USB-C to USB-C on the from the grip to the actual handle. So there's no lag whatsoever. Any button you push, any dial you kick in, it's automatically going to jump in. It doesn't only work with the ZR. It basically is compatible. And I'm going through a little file folder in my brain. I think it's compatible with every one of our mirrorless Z cameras. At the very least, Z8, Z9, Z6 III. I haven't tried it with a ZF, but it should work with no problem. So yeah, I think almost all of our mirrorless Z cameras, and it's really good. It mirrors not only the controls, but also the ergonomics of a larger gripped camera. So you get a nice feel to it as well. So I absolutely love the MCN10. It really is great.
With autofocus too, and relying on that, that's been like, I don't know if I'd be able to rely on autofocus in the way that I do and operate without that. You obviously can, but it's so much nicer to be able to control focus points as you're filming.
Yeah, it's so much easier. So much easier. Alrighty, well, guys, I think that's it. We're basically at the 1 hour mark, and we have been nonstop questions the entire time. So I want to say, obviously, thanks everybody for tuning in, for listening to myself, and more importantly, listening to Preston, because that's why I think most of you guys were actually here. But obviously, thank you, Preston, for coming out and gracing us with your presence again. As I said before, whether it's at a launch, whether it's an AMA here, there's always things, little nuggets that I just want to kind of pick your brain about for hours and just hear you talk about it. Today was no different. Again, when you were talking about light, that's what grabbed me for tonight. I want to hear you talk about more light. I want to maybe in the future us do some sort of workshop where it's just basically building out a scene. It's here's your scene, what is your thought process, and Preston, go.
Deal.
But anyways, it is. Thank you very much for you joining us, Preston. Thank you everybody else for tuning in. We will obviously have more of these AMAs. We do have a few of them kind of planned out internally. We will be sending out emails. Go and check your socials. When you hear about it, we will usually send out a quick little reminder to make sure you don't forget. So hopefully you guys enjoy these. If there's any topics that you guys want to hear about, go and throw it in the comments. Whether it's in this kind of live one right here, or if you do want to throw it in the main comment, because this video will stay up on YouTube for at least the foreseeable future. So go and throw your ideas out there, because we do have some plans going forward. But to be honest with you, if there's something great out there, we can go and change our plans, and we can go and kind of make a few little kind of cool additions to it. So if you have ideas, make sure you go and throw them out there. And until the next AMA, guys, thank you so much for joining us. Have a great night.